wherever you are, welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensie Owl Bob. That's me. Here I am, being with you. And remember, don't believe a word I say. I'm just a griot, here to tell you a story, right? So, and my name is Sensie Owl Bob. What does sensei mean? Teacher. That's all it means, right? Remember your favorite teacher, Miss Girling from kindergarten? She was your sensei. Any good teacher you ever had is your sensei. And any good school experience you had was you were in a hambu. Sensei, Japanese word for teacher. Hambu is a Japanese word for house of learning. What are schools in the Western motif? Basically, mind-altering prison. So, good luck with that. And what are you doing today? So here it is, 1 minute and 21 seconds. And no one's here yet, and no thumbs up yet. But hey, come on. Subscribe, get other people to watch. Go look at I was looking at all my other shows during that time, and you should go look at what I've been watching on my YouTube videos. Not mine, but other people's, like Chris Hedges, and and YouTube is very interesting. It keeps weaving me this web of stuff that kind of what I think about, but I haven't really been looking for, right? I haven't been asking the instrument to find me this, that, or the other thing. And it's finding it for me. And what I found is a bunch of brilliant women. Guys on YouTube are morons. Women who are talking about, like I watch, Jimmy Haifong, I watch the two Chinese professors, and they all basically have the same people on. They either have Colonel Doug, or CIA Larry, or Colonel Larry, or Scott, right? That's about it, right? Now, those guys have an interesting point of view, but that's all that is. It's one avenue, one point of view, right? And it's not bad. It's a good, 0.01% of the big picture, right? Well, the girls have there's this one girl who's a archaeologist, anthropologist, and she's been digging around the Greek and Roman and everybody else's mythology, right? She's like, and she's hot too, right? And she's got a sense of humor, and I love the way she edits, because I don't edit anything. This is like a stream of consciousness. She just goes on, and every time she gets carried away, like, she cuts that out, right? And the way she edits it is perfect. It's almost as, I don't know if you guys have noticed that YouTube is now taking, whatever long, like this thing, I'll probably end up speaking at least, 30 minutes to 2 hours tonight, depending on who shows up and how many of you guys actually give me, something to read and respond to, which I like to do. That's when the show is good. That's kind of when the juice really flows. But these girls there's a Wendy, next show, I'm going to go back and look at all their names and get the names of their channels so I can give them to you, because they are brilliant. This Wendy girl, she's like Wendy from, Peter Pan, so, but better. So she got glasses. Now, the anthropologist, that girl, she is like hot. She's always wearing black, and really, she looks like a hero from a, comic book, right? So anyway, like Elon, what's the girl's name? Anyway, so I've been watching a ton of stuff. There's a interesting thing called Babylon 5. That's quite interesting. There is a thing called The Librarian. That's pretty interesting. And there are other shows that keep popping in. But these girls from their YouTubes, just out of sight. There's another girl. She is she knows everything. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And she talks about modern literature and like banking and how World War One and World War Two were the same war, and everyone involved and who was the scum. Everyone involved was a scumbag. Everyone involved knew that this war was going to happen, and like World War One, 15 million people died. They knew that if they didn't do certain things, so what did they do in Versailles? Make sure that Germany was like put the screws on, and that they would come out the other side and do it again. But instead of just 14 million people dying, they were going to make sure that like 300 million people would die, and it would throw the rest of the world into this wearing blender of geopolitics that would put us exactly where we are right now. So, because there were so many places when Donny and Mikhail Gorbachev got rid of nuclear weapons, they could have very quickly said, okay, so instead of spending all this money on this crazy shit, Donny could, not Donny, Reagan, Ronnie could have said, okay, we're going to put, SDI on the back, but no, they went double down on it. How do you, so to pay for it, we got, George Bush, and what did he do? He had war in basically, why did he go into Kuwait? Why did he go into Iraq? The 91 war, right? Where we went in, we put, basically 600,000 people right there, and all our air force and everything, and just basically did. But we didn't people don't realize that Saddam Hussein was our boy. We put him in power. We gave him all the weapons to go attack Iran in the Iran-Iraq war. We gave him poison gas that killed over 70,000 Iranians in that 5-year war. We did that. And all the people who have died since 9/11 in the Mideast, we did that. The Arab Spring. Lebanon. Not Lebanon. Muammar Gaddafi's country. He was again our guy. He had a nuclear weapon, and we said, listen, if you don't pull it out, if you go somewhere else with your technology, don't do that. We'll make sure no one ever attacks you, right? But 2 years later, we kill them. It's been shown. Henry Kissinger said, if you're our enemy, we'll give you a hard time. But if you're our ally, we will kill you, right? He said that. So all this stuff is right in our face, right? You go look at what the United States has done since Christopher Columbus. There were 60 million indigenous people here. We killed them all. Took us 400 years, but we killed them all. And then we went out west. Why did we have, our revolution, right? Because George W. was the biggest real estate developer in the world. And he was pissed off that France, England, Spain had treaties with the Indians because they had been there for, 300 plus years, and they didn't have enough white people to go up against 60 million Indians. So they had treaties, and that worked out relatively until the French and Indian Wars. That's when things went off the rails. And, what's his name? If you've seen that movie about George W. as a young George W., the biggest piece of shit, the biggest lie, when they said, why they said Washington was honest. I cannot tell the lie. Again, that is just like everything our government has ever said. It's 100. It's lie. There's no truth coming out of the United States ever, never. Just go look at it. It's right there. You don't have to really dig that hard. Just go on your device and start looking at history from the Revolution, right? And say, oh, device, tell me all about George W. What was he, right? where'd he come from? Where did he make his money? What was he doing? And what did he write about, and why he wanted to have a revolution? Right? Best part of waking up. The best part of waking up is waking up, not being dead. That's every morning I wake up. I mean, every muscle in my body is killing me. Pain is like ridiculous. I can barely see. And, I say, praise God, praise Jesus, and bless this moron, meaning this moron, for having another day to, in every day and every way, take your piece of the earth and make it stronger. That's what this moron does. And what he has done since he was born, because he died. I died. I was a blue baby, my little umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. And the guys who were the doctors were smoking cigarettes along with my mother in the delivery room, because you could. Hey, who knew? And my mom was addicted to nicotine. And that's why, 2 of her babies plus me died, right? She had like 7 kids, and 2 died. I died, but Dr. Black was there to save my ass. She was the, angel, not angel of death, the angel of life. She was a midget, or diminutive woman, but she was brilliant. She invented modern, the modern incubator for babies. She did, right? The heart monitor. She did. About 20 other kind of things dealing with birth. She did. And did she get any credit for it? But everybody in the world in that scene knew who she was and what she did. That didn't matter to her. As long as she could do what she wanted to do, that was all it was. As long as she could serve God's love, that's all it was, right? So, anyway, and that's kind of where we are. Human beings are 3 types. We all have a source in us. Otherwise, we couldn't animate. This little thing would just be a bag of water, right? It wouldn't, because all it is, a bag of water, 90-something% water, and something percent trace elements, right? And we only exist because of a certain form of kind of alchemy, right? So go on your device and look up the Essenes, right? Go look up Gnostic with a G, and that'll start you down the path. And the next show, I will do some homework, and I'll make a total reading list for you guys. And all this stuff, you don't even have to read it. You just go to that site and hit the YouTube, and it'll play it. I mean, you can read it if you want to. I mean, it'll put it out in text. And you can have it sent in text or even the audio to you. But it's all right there. And I play it, at night when I go to sleep. I listen to all this stuff, And, all the history. So anyway. So is anyone saying anything? Come on. Why don't you guys say something? How about a thumbs? There's 2 of you there. How about 2 thumbs up? Come on. Get to it. Subscribe. Come on. You can do it. I know you can do it. 13 minutes and 44, 45, 46, 47. So we're at one of those interesting periods of time. Now, I was born in the 50s, and I experienced a lot of interesting stuff. Collapses, wars, people don't even know what happened in 47 or 50 something. But, Iran was a democracy. It voted in their own guy who was really smart, and he was revamping their economy, turning them into a capital state, not a capitalist, but a people's capital state, meaning where everyone could do whatever the heck they wanted. They could start businesses, own their own house, but the money wasn't being covered, wasn't being leveraged. Their wealth was not being leveraged. It was their wealth, right? And all the resources, it was going into building the resources, the infrastructure of a new Iran. Who knew? And then the CIA got rid of that guy and put the Shah of Iran, who had no legitimacy whatsoever. Just like how England took all of Palestine, all the oil states, and put all these camel jockeys in there that had no. They didn't represent anybody except themselves. And that's what they were looking for. Guys who were just criminals. And that's the guys, the Saud family or whatever they're called. The same thing with, Iraq. Well, Iran too, because they put the Shah in. He was there for almost 20 years. But they had the Ayatollah Khomeini kind of off in the wings. And so when the Shah wasn't quite doing what we wanted him to do, we gave him the shot. He got cancer. They sent him to America to be healed, and he died. And the Ayatollah was there, and the Savat, the secret police were going nuts. And so the people rebelled against them because they were a very limited group of people. And so they trotted out the Ayatollah, right? And he started, the Islamic State, right? But that was totally CIA. Again, don't believe a word I say. Go check it out. There are photos of the Ayatollah being helped down the steps from a U.S. Air Force C-130 coming from France, where the Ayatollah had hung out for the last 20 years. Not on the line. He wasn't like a rebellious, person in Tehran or in Iran itself. No, he was, having a good time in Paris on the CIA nickel. And they brought him back, and he was. There's a picture you can find. I'm sure if you Google it, Ayatollah Khomeini being brought back from France into Tehran in the 1980s by General Secord and Colonel Oliver North. There's his picture. Those two guys on either side of him helping him down the stairs. Ding, 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 ding. Now, the ICGR or whatever those guys are, they've been around for 40 years. They had a war with Iraq because the Ayatollah was only one character actor. There were lots of different interests in that government that changed everything. It wasn't just him or the mullahs. They actually had a constitution. They actually had a working legislature and court that actually kind of worked. And they had about 4 different kinds of military, not like Army, Navy. No, they had the ICGS, right? Those guys. They had 3 other groups, right? Plus the Army and Air Force and Navy of Iran. So they were very split up, just like the only time America has ever really worked has been when we had not just the Democrats and Republicans, 2 wings of the same oligarchic corporate bird. No, we had about 8 different parties. The Social Democrats, the Union Party, this party, that party, Women's Party, Black Party, right? And they were called different things, but they were there. And so for about 70 years after the Civil War, up until World War II, the United States kind of had this interesting, almost like the English Parliament, meaning it had a very diverse political structure. So there were a lot of people, a lot of governors and a lot of state governments that were all these like union guys or socialist guys or this kind of, or feminists or whatever. There was tons of different diversity of our government, and that's why it worked out pretty good. By 1950, the difference between the guy working on the factory floor and the guy on the boardroom was about 20%. Now it is like 1,000,000%. There used to be 70 different media outlets, meaning radio, TV, movies kind of entities like RKO, right? And Metro Media and, NBC, CBS, ABC, and a whole bunch of others. Now there are only 6, and they're owned by 3 families. And they're all really good buddies with Danny Chump. I love my Danny Chump. I love it. I mean, you can't, the guy lies so much. I mean, and he's got some kind of rod in his head where, I mean, he's not, he's going demented. He was demented when he was like, 15. what he went through with his dad and his mom and his brother committing suicide, really good stuff. Stuff that a good movie gets made out of. Go read the shit that his niece, the oldest guy who was named after Donnie's dad. Donnie was like in the middle, right? A bad habit you have. Why don't you ask what's a good habit you have? My best habit. My best habit is whenever I feel like, I don't know what's going on. I go, praise God, praise Jesus. Hey guys, help me out. Have no clue what's going on. Please take the wheel of my life and drive the car. I am your doula in agape love. Works out, my life is, I have no idea about it, but it works out pretty good. I mean, I told you a story about Walmart's, right? And, I just, like 12 items in the cart. This woman had like 5,000. And she's going, beep, beep, beep. And, there were like 20 places where a cashier could be doing it, but they only had one cashier. The other 19 were like closed, right? But they had another 60 automatic ones where the robot could, but I can't lift shit out of the basket, right? I have to, in the cart. So anyway, I'm online, and this lady, beep, 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 and, I'm reading the magazines on the side there, looking at my horoscope. And then one guy comes behind me, and another guy's behind him, and another guy behind him. These are all people who kind of need, like me, to get checked out by a human being. So anyway, we're waiting, and this woman is like, beep, 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 beep. And they're putting it in bags and putting it in the carts, and then she puts her card in there, and she's $70 shy, right? So she's starting to get a little weepy and, upset. And so there's, the lady says, well, just pull things out that you don't think you need. So she's having to go through the bags and pull out stuff. And she's at the third thing. It's taken 5 minutes for her to figure out what 3 things. And she's probably going to have to get rid of 50 things, right? And so all the other people are starting to get antsy and ornery and upset. I open my wallet, and I have a $20 bill. So I turn to these other 4 people behind me who are well-heeled, right? They are upper middle class thinking people who think they're rich, and they know, and they live in reality, and they know the numbers at the bottom of the page, and they're in a rush. Come on. So I turn to them and I say in my, outside, I say, hey! And they kind of all go like this. It kind of knocks them out of their, individual, egocentric neuroses of sociopathic motif. Anyway, so they're all thinking about how they could kill this poor woman. So, but I've already looked at the woman, and I look at her shoes, and I know that she is. I look at her, and she's not in scrubs, but she has her scrubby shirt underneath a jacket, and it's hot out. I mean, why? I don't know what that, but she has her little ID and all that, so I'm assuming she's a nurse. I mean, she's not a nurse's aide, she's a nurse, and she's got the thing for being in where you're about to die room. Anyway, so so she knows some stuff. She's been well educated. So, here's a woman who's well educated, and she's stressed because she doesn't have the $70 to buy the food, right? So I say to the guys, hey, and they kind of go like that. So I said, listen, all you guys are Christian. I got $20. This is the only $20 I got. I'm sure you guys have more than that. Why don't you all take $20 out? Well, let's pay this lady's thing and then give her an extra $20 to hit the road with, right? And why would we do that? She said that. Well, look at her. And this woman was black, but she's a nurse, well educated, and working in a ward where people are dying, right? Whatever ward that is. So she's not just like cleaning out the bedpan. So I turn to her and I say, so listen, let me help you out here. And I go, so what is this? Is this all, how many, is this stuff for you? And she goes, no, I have 5 kids. I said, 5 kids? Whoa. I said, so is this like for the month? And she goes, no, this is kind of what they consume every week. So you got, I said, she goes, yes, I spend about $1,500 a month just on their food. I said, that must be tough for you and your husband. My husband died. Don't have a husband. She goes, I've been doing double, working in two different hospitals every day. She's working 15 hours a day. So she's making close to probably 100 grand. And yet she can't get by with 100 grand to feed her kids, pay the rent. So I said, do you own your house? No. Um, I have to pay rent. What are you paying for rent? $3,800. I was like, oh, yo. And she goes, I have two children who have special needs. And so it's like, and she goes, and I don't have any insurance for my kids because that was all taken care of my husband. Now he's dead. And no one's helping us out. I'm like, so I go, okay, let's see here. And so I opened my wallet and I said, I only have $20, so here's $20. Hold on to that. I said, here's this card that I have an account and I have no idea how much is on it. The other one I know that I have like $12 on because I just called them up this morning, so I'm not going to use that card. But I never use this, so yeah, I know it still works. I don't have any idea how much is on it. So this is, praise God, praise Jesus, help us out here. Let's be in for, so I stick it in there. It goes bloop, 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 bloop. And it says, do you want cash back? And I go, in for a penny, in for a pound. So I go, yep, $40. So I hit that and it goes bloop, 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 approved. And so it pays off her $70 food. And it, so now she has $60, 20 cash I gave her before I put the card in there, and leaving me with nothing, or God knows how much is on my mystery card. Ooh, I just did something I shouldn't have done. I made a really strong salve for a friend of mine. I'm going to probably go see tomorrow. And I used a lot of super duper cayenne pepper. I've washed my hands about 5 times. See how that eye is like, and that was just me rubbing my eye. And yes, so watch out for cayenne pepper. It won't hurt it. It'll probably make it better. But in the interim, it's a little bizarre. Anyway, so that was like a miracle. That was like as good as parting the Red Sea, That's as good as, boy, I'm a member of this special club and God loves us the best. We're the chosen few of this special club. I mean, we can do anything. We can kill babies. We can, and we had this other god. His name is Ball, and we barbecue babies for Ball. That's B&B, barbecuing babies for Ball, right? And so, yes, so there we are. What, there's 3 of you watching, and I don't get a single thumbs up? Come on. So that went on, and that whole day was like just no matter what obstacle there was no obstacle because I was there in love's co-creation, right? I was there in source, right? And that's where I do my best. I'm not perfect, but I can do my best. I can have a conscious intent. And that's another prayer you should be using. Conscious intent, I am. Om. Conscious intent, I am. Om. Conscious intent, I am. Om. Praise Spirit. Praise Source. Praise God. Praise Jesus. Source is unconditional love. Jesus is unconditional forgiveness. The Holy Spirit is in us to in every day and every way take the piece of Source's love and make it stronger. So you say that prayer 20, 30 times a day and hand your life over to Source, right? You can call it God. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Because really, in those 10 commandments, when the Pharisees asked Jesus, so we have all these rules and laws, what are the most important ones? And Jesus said, well, let's see, no false gods, and treat your brother and sister just like you want to be treated. I think if you do those 2, you're fine. You're good. You're all good, right? The thing is, you have to do that all the time. So you have to be in source all the time. You have to be praise God, praise Jesus all the time, right? Be there. Now you're a chucklehead. You'll get distracted. You'll do something stupid, but that's okay. You're a chucklehead. That's understood. The thing is to learn from those incidents. And you'd think, I mean, wow, I love Donald Trump. So he goes and attacks without any provocation. I mean, we bombed. First of all, we killed their first heavy-duty, most important general. This is like 3 years ago, right? Then somebody gives everyone their cell phone that blows up and kills about 2,500 people in Lebanon, right? Mostly innocent folk in supermarkets and such, but takes out a good portion of Hezbollah's upper echelon. But since 2000, they kind of realized we're not going to have a pyramid organizational structure. We're going to have everyone in their own groups being responsible for what they need to do. So that's why Hezbollah right now, and they've lost a good portion of their upper echelon, but still Hezbollah is beating the crap out of the IDF. Right? Now, if the IDF had any brains, they would leave Lebanon and leave it alone, right? And also basically make a little, thing of, listen, we're going to stay back from our northern border here. We're not going to put stuff right on it. We're not going to put military shit right in your face. We're going to be back 10 miles, right? And would leave that 10-mile, yellow line on our land, and you don't go on it, and we don't go on it, and everything will be fine. And that's kind of what they've had a number of times, right? Like the 6-Day War, and Israel took everything because they basically attacked everyone without provocating, right? And so that's what happened to Iran, right? Iran, their general gets taken, and they basically do a thing that shows America and Israel that, hey, don't mess with us, right? So they don't start a war. They just do a number of things that shows that, hey, don't mess with us, right? Okay. So a few months later, and in Lebanon, the big warehouse of fertilizer goes up. It was like a nuclear, it just nearly took out Beirut, right? It just shook everything to the point where their economy collapsed. And so Lebanon has been on resuscitation since then, right? Then, a few other things occurred, and they still can't, Hezbollah, you can't kick their butt. You can hurt them, and you can hurt Lebanon, like when Israel, just bombed the crap out of, Beirut. That had nothing to do with southern Lebanon. And that they're like scraping southern Lebanon. They're Gazaizing, all of this. And again, it's not the Jews. I'm sorry. I'm kind of Jewish, I was in Williamsburg, Brooklyn for 10 years between 1970 and 1982. I mean, I was coming and going, but I always had this big, beautiful loft. And, what was the name of that? Roebling's, off of Roebling's, right near, Roberto Clemente. They built it for all the Puerto Ricans who were like, their housing was just happened to be taken out by lightning, religious lightning, and the landlords made a shitload of money out of that one, and put those poor people who had been working in those landlords' factories, but no longer did they have to do that. They sold all of their manufacturing motif to the Chinese, and then took that money. And they were also the biggest diamond dealers and gold barterers on the planet. So they took all of that and basically had already gotten into the semiconductor world, because folks at Grumman Aerospace had a side company that was, started the technology of, UV lithography, right, to make integrated circuits. So anyway, this group kind of bought that, and they were, the the master race. That's who they were. And so they did that, and they basically threw the Puerto Ricans under the bus, but those guys moved back up to the west side and started working in the garment district and da-da-da. But one of the political things that was given those folks who could vote because they were American citizens, they were from Puerto Rico, they weren't from foreign lands, even though they were treated that way, they basically got an apartment building made for them called Roberto Clemente, maybe about 600 units. And every one of those units ended up with a Lubavitcher or Hasidim or, what's the other guys? The master race. Anyway, I forgot. But anyway, I lived there for, from 72 to 82. Not like I said, I was coming and going, but I had my loft, and my landlord loved my ass. He was a rabbi, Rabbi Ratner, right? And he was a head rabbi, and he was like the top dog of, 6 of the rabbis that were in America, and those 6 had the Hebrew Jews power in Israel, right? They were the guys who kind of, the bones of AIPAC were on those 6 guys. So anyway, one of those guys was my rabbi. So he put me in a Lubavitcher, a rabbi school, because, I was reading Hebrew and Greek and looking at all these myths and looking at, the Torah and the Talmud and the Kabbalah. And he saw them on my bookshelf, and he goes, "Wow, you're reading this stuff?" I said, "Yeah." And he opened it. "Wow, it's in Hebrew." I said, "Yeah." I said, "But I have this other, and there are these books that it's like, let's say the Torah, right? So you know what Torah translated into Greek and then into English means? You suck. So the Old Testament, you read that in King James, the whole book is how you suck, You suck, there's nothing you can do, you suck, even you've got, you still suck, So anyway, so I was exposed to all of this, and Rabbi Ratner's big plan for me was, to, expose me to all of the hidden, like the Kabbalah. That's really what he taught me, the Kabbalah, the esoteric, occult text of the Hebrew tribes, and to show that what the story was isn't what's going on. So he wanted me to see that. And the other thing he wanted me to do was to strip all the really great, as he was a Hasidic, he wasn't Lubavitcher, or what is that other group that really isn't part of the 12? Like Jews, they came from Judah, right? And they weren't part of the 12, right? They were kind of, they were from one of the 12, but and in all those 12 tribes, they had all kinds of everybody. And that's like, in the beginning. And in the beginning, Larry was begat by Bob, and Bob, so all of that, like 112 pages of Genesis, of Deuteronomy and Numbers and Kings and Judges and all that stuff is basically laying down the foundation of what the Hebrew nation was, right? Not the Jewish nation. Sorry. And again, most European Jews, if you came from, the United States or Australia or South Africa, you're basically a European Jew. And what were those guys? They were not from the blood. They weren't from the tribes. They were basically from somebody like the Khazarian mob. They were from up there above on the sides of Ukraine and Russia, where there are a lot of different things going on, from about, the Roman Empire, then the Holy Roman Empire, and then that splits into 2, the Vatican and up there in Sealand and near Turkey. Anyway, that whole kind of where you had the Greek Orthodox and the Russian Orthodox and all those, a lot of different sects. the Russians, basically, there were these guys called the Khazarian mob, and they were mobsters. That Muslim thing of Sharia law that came from those guys, right? I mean, again, I studied Islam a great deal, right? I had a lot of great Islamic teachers, right? And so at Columbia and at Boston College and in the Mideast, I was there a good deal, right? In the 90s. So because I was sent there to go with scholarly groups who guys with little brushes and little rakes and screens and looking for artifacts, right? And that's one of the main reasons why we went into Iraq, why George H went into Iraq. It wasn't the Kuwait? No, it didn't matter, right? But what happened at the end of that, Kuwait became ours. That's why our biggest air bases are in Kuwait and in Saudi Arabia and in Jordan, not in the other Emirates. They got a few here, there, and everywhere just so they could feel semi-protected. They're not feeling too protected now, especially since we lost we have no interceptors left. That's why our Navy doesn't even come close. We're staying 1,000 miles away from Iran. We're in the Indian Ocean. So we can't do anything with those things. So we had those poor guys sitting out there for nothing. And they're like, they have no food, they have no toilet paper, they have no water. They're really pissed off. And a lot of guys are committing suicide. And it just is exactly what happened during the Vietnam War when the Forrestal got, it's the aircraft carrier that's out there and bombing North Vietnam, blah, blah, blah. But it's been out there. They're not supposed to be on station for no more than 5 months. And those guys were out there for like 7 months when they were going nuts. Our aircraft carriers have been on station now almost a year, more than a year. And so they don't have anything to eat or nothing. And it's now really hot there. Normally it's 120 degrees every day. They're on the deck of an aircraft carrier where airplanes with jet engines is like 250 degrees and being made to work really hard and don't get a air conditioning, and the air conditioning don't work and the toilets don't work. And so they're having, those boats you're going to see one of them not being sunk by Iran. They're going to be sunk by the Navy guys who just can't take it anymore. They've got hundreds of guys who have committed suicide. And the military can call suicide many different things. Oh, that was an accident. So it's way worse than can even imagine. And it's just going to be off the frigging hook. And that big, beautiful bill, what did that do? It made it so we never had a constitution. Never. The Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the, Declaration of Independence. Donald Trump has shown that none of them matter, right? And, George Washington was the biggest. He wanted to have a rebellion so he could get out of all of the European treaties they had with the Indians. They had enough white people there. They had a lot of guns and cannons after the French and Indian War. So they're ready. And the guys who started scalping wasn't the Indians. It was the French, right? And the Indians didn't want to fight this stupid war. So the French gave, hey, we're going to give you a bunch of gold and guns and this and that. And you go kill English guys and cut their scalp. We'll give you X amount of gold for that scalp. I mean, all you got to do is read the history books are right there. You can go look at it on your thing, and you can see, what was George Washington do before the Revolution? He was a real estate developer. They said he was a surveyor. No, was he surveying other people's property for him to take it and build cities, towns, and governments that he was going to run, that he owned. He didn't have to be president. He was the first one. And the rest, and then, Jefferson, Adams, all his buddies, right? Then 1812, the English come back and they go, listen, we let you win. We won every battle. And then we walked away. Why? Because we didn't want to pay for this shit anymore, right? And we were already invested. So we couldn't break those treaties, but you guys could. So good. You did that. So we're making a lot of money off of you guys. So straighten up and fly right. We own you. When we say jump, you, and that's the special relationship. And it wasn't fucking England. It wasn't the royal family that did that. No. It It was the guys from the City of London. Go check out the City of London. What is the City of London? Go check it out. Has anyone said anything? No. Oh, there's somebody. Janet. Hey, there's Janet. So Janet has been with us since the beginning. She's one of the original cadre. If it's still the same Janet, I think it. So anybody who wants to talk to me, Janet, give me buzz at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. I'm just rejiggering my digital world here, so maybe in a month I'll have things figured out. I mean, I just figured out how to send emails on my new digital world. Anyway, JP, Droopy, yes, yeah. Yes, Pooh. Yep, that's our girl. Yep. So, what do you think's going on, J Pooh? So, what do you think of my come on, use more words than I don't even know what I said L. I said ILMAO capital. What does that mean? That message is held in review? Maha. Well, good luck with making America healthy again. I forget about it. Did you know when the guys came here for the big soccer woo-woo? Laughed my ass off, yes. So I think it was the Danish or the Norwegian Norwegian, I think it was. They brought up every bit of food and water to America where they were going to stay because they didn't want to eat anything or drink any water from the United States because it's poison. It is poison. Where I'm at is poison. Virtually everyone around here is dying. Now I can stay in state and I can, illuminate myself with source. But it's affecting me, when I lived out there in the deep green, I was again, my doctors constantly say that I'm the healthiest dead guy they know. But Janie Poo, what Donnie is doing is great. He's making America great again because he's destroying it. Most empires take 300 years to fall. Donnie is doing it in 8 months. I love this guy, right? Yes, he's causing tremendous chaos. He's like grifting billions of dollars, but he doesn't realize he's being set up. I mean, they put him. He's just a game show host, and all his cabinet, same thing. I mean, look at Besson, the guy in charge of the Treasury Department. That guy is such a dweeb. And who's in front of? We only have 3 people in the guys who are diplomats. His son-in-law, his golf partner. Elite, yes, they are elite. It's ooh baby. So Janie Poo, just drop me a little email, and we can talk mano y mano. And there's 3 of you there. Come on. No, there's only 1 of you. Only Janie is the only one left. So Jane, why do you think? You remember the good old days? We had 70, 80 people a night on this show, right? So why do you think? Have you looked at my shows that are, all the shows are still up there on my channel. They're still all there, all the way back, all the way to John Boy, all the way before John Boy, back from the big splat, and all the other, little things I ran through. The big eye, ooh, the eye, ooh, the eye sees you, the eye sees. I did a whole bunch of shows like that. And 70, 80, that's one of my most popular. That teenage boys love the big eye. The eye is watching you, the eye is watching you. Yes. So here we are, 49 minutes and 52 seconds. So what's going down? It's not a big deal. It's going to be, but it's been chaos, meaning I lived in New York City between, let's see, excellent shows, democratized, political reasons. Yeah, pretty much. But they done knock me off because they realize that kind of I am a needed presence in the little pond of the World Wide Web. It doesn't matter if you're the only one watching, Jane. The presence is here, right? And all those shows are there. And as the years go by, more and more people, oh, what the heck is this? And start looking at it and scratching their heads. But, Jane, what are you doing in your neighborhood? Because people they're looking for stuff to do. And the thing you need to do is like what I did at Walmart the other day. I mean, I had no money. I put the card that I hadn't been using in the last 6 years, but I still had it because by having it and paying off, it does things that it makes everything happy, right? So I kept that, and because when I first got it, I had money, and I put money in it and had a CD with it, which bought stuff and did things, and I had this thing called a funeral insurance, and I put money into that. And then when I kind of emptied the other things out and didn't really use it, that little, death benefit thing just kept rumbling around in that, paying this off, paying that off, and making money on this. I mean, by the pennies, right? Not like anything even worth mentioning, but it was still there, and it was like, and whenever the big machine sees that you're paying a debt, like clockwork, and that it was. I mean, I had nothing to do with it. The bank and how I set it all up, just had nothing to do with me. It just kept doing it. So when I needed it, and I needed a miracle to pay that lady's grocery bill, bing, right? And I basically gave her 60 in cash, bing. And I know that was enough to do something for her, that things will change for the better, because she has it in her to, like I said. So when I talked to her, I said, do you have I have 3 master's degrees. I said, well, obviously you're not using them in the right way. Go figure out how to take care of this. Just ask God, right? I gave her the, please God, help me out here. I don't have a clue. Because she sure didn't. I mean, she was so beat up by the situation of losing her husband, having no insurance. Anyway, so we're still here. And stuff is just getting weirder and weirder, but we're still here. All the hurricanes and terrible weather and all of that has nothing to do with global warming. It's, try to get into class action lawsuit. AWACS. Good. I've done I've helped, back in my legal days. I've helped a number, I work for, good old, what's his name? NYPIRG, right? New York Public Research Interest Group, the guy who sued General Motors for the death car. He ran for president a number of times. That people say, why are you running for president? Blah, blah, blah. All what it did was it gave him a platform to talk to people about what was really going on. Nobody else was, so he was. I can't put, his name will pop into my mind. So anyway, yes, keep doing stuff like that. And you can do it. Meaning, I did a ton of that, between 60, when did I start working for, what's his name? Who's the guy? Mr. Always working for, he was actually, everyone thinks he's Jewish, but he's not. He's actually Palestinian. Tall guy. He's older than dirt now. Anyway, so, yeah. Between 66 and 96, I did stuff like that. Ralph Nader. Is that it? Ralph Nader? Bob Nader, Gary Nader, Nader. I was one of Nader's Raiders. Yep, Ralph Nader. Thank you. So yes, I worked for him, and I didn't like work for him. I was one of his apostles. Right? I did my own thing with him. I would go, Ralph, I'm doing. First, I did work for him, but then I ended up working for, oh, the sloop. Pete Seeger cleaning up the Hudson River. That's where I met Judy Blue Eyes, and we Pete cleaned that. He would go up and down in that sailboat up the Hudson, and he would stop in little towns and like pull out his PA and do a nice little. He would. He had it set up so he didn't just show up, but he had people knowing he was going to show up that Saturday afternoon, and the people who were organized to clean up the river would come, and he would give them a nice little concert. We did that for a number of years, and there was another, not just Judy, but there was another girl, and she played a recorder, right? And anyway, and those were fun. I mean, that was fun. Two beautiful girls on each of my arm. Pete Seeger, who was loads of fun, his family, and all the people who loved him. Everyone loved Pete. He was just. And then when I started doing stuff, I could get Pete to show up to anything, and he would. Irwin Broken Witches now stopping the data centers. Yes, that guy is great. Here's a guy, Irwin. Anyway, that guy, he was just in a little town, and he heard about it and goes, I got to check into this. And he did, and he saw how screwed up it was. He's not a lawyer. He was just your average day guy, and he got his town into, like, showing up there with pitchforks and burning torches. Yeah, Pete Seeger, the folk singer. Yep, that guy. He was great social organizer. Everything he did was for the betterment of humanity and civilization. Like I said, he almost he single-handedly organized the cleanup of the Hudson River, which was totally disgusting because people like J.P. Morgan and Mr. Edison and GE and every disgusting corporate entity had their factories along the Hudson and just dumped their a lot of paper mills, just the worst of the worst, and killed everything. And within 20 years, we stopped it by, just like you said, and suing them in their little towns to stop it, right? And we got people, everybody was corrupt, the city council, the mayor, the state legislators. So we got people who would never have run for anything. They got because their kids were getting cancer, their mother got cancer, and so they got involved. And we educated them, and they educated other people, and then people who had the chops ran for things and basically stopped it. And then we cleaned it up and sued them, so those corporations had to pay like the Superfund. That was one of the things we did. And it was just like that guy, just like the guy you just said, closing down the data centers, right? That guy is a Pete Seeger. I don't know if he plays guitar, and that was, the same thing with the Stop Shoreham campaign. It was just a handful of people who started off. And there were 3 old ladies who had started off way before, like in the 60s when, Mr. Rockefeller and the other military industrial, because Long Island was just one gigantic high-tech, that's where integrated circuits started, coming out of Grumman Aerospace, out of Islip, right? And everything from, Suffolk County line, Old Brookville, and the CW Post College, and all along 107, there were all these estates that were basically bought out and turned into research centers. They look nice. Ain't these very Totar architecture. There's our history is just unbelievable, right? And you look at the internet and there's a lot of great stuff on it. Like I said, um, um, Jane, do me a real big favor. Send me an email to my the dude awake 42 at Gmail so I know where you are, and I'll start sending you stuff. Jane, did I ever send you any of my novels? My one computer that everything was on died, and it's in the hands of a friend of mine. It's been a year and a half, and he hasn't quite fixed it. Anyway, so but I started writing new novels. Yep, Pete Seeger, the folk singer. Yep. Anyway, and I got pictures of it too, even though, yeah, yes, have. Okay, good. Send me another one so I can find it, right? And you have my phone number. Don't tell it on the thing. You call me if you do. It's still the same phone number, and text me on it. Like I said, I have a new phone, and it's way smarter than I am, and I'm having to learn its tricks. So anyway, the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Okay, good. So we'll reconnect. So yes, 101. When it gets to be ones across the board, at 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds, I'm going to bail. But I'm glad you came and reconnected, Jane. I started to notice you there, so that's good. So get other people to watch, Let's get some more thumbs up and get more people here. And because it would be great. I want to hear your stories, Jane. I want to hear other people's stories. Remember how the cadre, I mean, you guys would talk more with each other than you did with me. And guys like Dragon, who was the worst of the worst trolls, turned out to be a sweetheart. He just needed a home. Then I, not knowing anything about how this stuff works, hit the wrong button. I lost him. And then he showed up. And then he never really came back. He showed up once and said, here I am. We had a nice little, I said, email me this, get me. And then, he might have done it and I didn't see it because at a certain point I didn't have access to the internet 24/7. I have it way better than I had to go either, I had to walk, hobble with my broken hip 1.5 miles to my neighbor's house and sit on his porch and talk to you guys. When I was at the Deep Green, when my car broke down and I couldn't, but I did it. Couldn't do it all the time. And my hip is much better. I didn't get it operated on. I've been, healing myself. And so that's what it is. So anyway, yeah, we're getting close there. So Jane, yes, tell the folk the stories of the cadre in the good old days, like 9 years ago, and how you felt then and how you feel now. I myself, I don't feel disappointed. I don't feel, the end of the world. No, I've seen the end of the world. I've been through the end of the world a number of times, and it's no big deal, right? As long as you're consciously aware, have conscious intent, and serve, your life isn't about our lives individually. My life is not about me. It's about us. Yeah, I know about that guy. And there are a whole bunch of stuff, like the med beds, back in the day, in the 60s, when I was in New York City and I was the dude, I wasn't just building, discos and rich people's places and doing art shows all over New York. No, I was doing more than that. I was involved in what was called, back in the day, esoteric, right? And there was that thing we started called the Blue Door. It was an esoteric center on the corner of, I think it was Worcester and Spring. I know it was on Spring. But it was one of those loft buildings. Someone had, enough money to buy it, and we had this esoteric center that was really good. And there was another thing called Weiser's Bookstore, and there were a number of what were known as curiosity shops, meaning, I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show about the library. Go check that out. It's on YouTube now. And that was a great series. So was this thing called Babylon 5. And all the great shit that was ever anywhere is on that. So this guy that Jane's talking about, David Sinclair, he is basically, you go find him on YouTube. And yes, so back in the 60s into the early 70s, I was very involved in creating, I was part of a thing called the U.S. Psychotronic Society. That was a mixture of advanced physics, electrical engineering, and the occult. You know, did you ever see that movie Devil Boy or Hellboy? And the Nazis were on a Scottish island trying to, break through into another dimension. Well, I was involved with that kind of stuff. And the stuff, if you go read part of our little U.S. Psychotronic Society, were all the people who were involved in the Philadelphia experiment, right? And not just back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, but as it kept going on, a guy named Preston Nichols, and he wrote a book called the Montauk Project. And pretty much everything from Montauk, the most eastern point of Long Island, all the way to New York City, it was known as the Manhattan Engineering District. Tesla had turned the whole thing into a science fair. Virtually everything underneath it is ancient, kind of Tartarian civilization underneath Long Island and New York. That's why it's there as it is. Why the rich and powerful are there. Why the Empire State Building is there. Why the Chrysler Building, which is a Tesla power generator that he copied straight up from the pyramids. Well, back in the day, it was near me. I was out in eastern Long Island in a place called the Mauritius and Remsenburg and Shoreham and a place called Oldfield. Those were places I had properties and stuff, and all over, and everything in between. I was doing a lot of stuff, but they were building the Shoreham nuclear power plant right on top of Tesla's Wardenclyffes. I mean, physically right on top of it. Because they wanted it to be this energetic weapon. And we stopped it. Yeah, a bunch of old ladies and me, and then about 1 million other people. But those 3 old ladies who were up against it, and they had been up against it since the 60s, and then I kind of moved out there in the 80s, and because my training wife wanted a little house in the country with a picket fence, and so I couldn't do that. And I had loads of amazing places in New York City, but they were all abandoned buildings and other weirdest kind of, troll. I was part of the guys who were the underground people, the mole people, right? I had a few very interesting, doorways into that. So anyway, and also downtown in Tribeca, I had a bunch of things down there. But none of those things, a place called the Ear Inn, another place called the Raccoon Lounge. Yep, exactly. So I kind of know that guy. So I know those people, between 69 and I left in 88, right? Because it got to a point, it was very interesting. So we played around with a ton of stuff. And I was very well, because I went to Cooper Union. I got into this thing that they had for about 6 years called the Alternative Technology Department. And boy, did we do alternative technology. And that got me into the UN, where we started an NGO, non-governmental office, that did exactly that. We thought of technology that could be totally third world. So the first thing we did, I asked the guys at UNICEF, I said, so what's the biggest problem? What does the people out there in Africa and India and third world, where they're dying of starvation and everything else, and imperialism, what is the one thing they really need more than anything? They say potable water. The corporations have gone there and destroyed everything. Secret space program. Yes. It's called there are a number of them. There's the Blue Project, but there's a thing that's been around forever called the Solar Warden. And that was out of MJ-12 and out of the U.S. Naval Intelligence Department. And that's where, what's his name? Good old Gene Roddenberry came from. He came from the military straight into working for Lucille Ball at Desilu as a guy who fixed, he was a script doctor. And then he did the first show he produced, he wrote, came up with the idea, created the idea. It was called, it was about being a Marine lawyer, I forgot what it was called. But anyway, it was about the military and the law, right? And it was, it was like Perry Mason with a uniform. And so, and that movie with, you can't take you. So, yes, that was Gene Roddenberry. And he was sent there because he had, been part of Solar Warden. He was sent there by his people to the point that his thing was that he was flying aircraft, but he was part of the Navy flying B-29s, right? And, getting it ready for the atomic bomb. So anyway, he was all part of that. So at a certain point, they wanted basically everyone to get ready to go into space. And we do. We have, millions of Earthlings out there in space. And they're not just Americans. They're everybody, China, everybody who's involved in this whole scene transnationally is out there in space. China, Russia, all of, EU guys, France, all the old entities of that Western imperialism, right? And it's a transnational thing. It's not just the East or the West. It's all the above. And that's why China is like becoming a primary source. And America is being turned into literally a banana republic. So, and we're going to lose our, Donnie's, why could you be more stupider than go after Iran? I mean, they told exactly, after the war with Iraq that we sent Iraq after them. And after we kind of militarized the whole Mideast, not just Israel, but everybody else, and I feel sorry for Israel because they got played again. You read the Old Testament. How many times did they lose Jerusalem? 4 major times and 7 other times. It's like, for being the chosen folk, they weren't doing too good at that. And it was, why did the burning bush send Moses into Egypt to bring him out of there? Because they had been there 70 years and they were stopped being the Hebrews. They're already becoming, Moloch. They were already Egyptians because they weren't cleaning toilets. They weren't building the pyramids. No, sorry. They were lawyers, doctors, accountants, So, yeah, that's, and becoming Egyptian priests, they love Moloch. They, I love children as long as they are cooked properly, And you can see they still like doing that, it's really, and again, it's not the Hebrews. It's not my people. My people are, are really sweet and brilliant and smart and because you look at like the Nazis, we had to get rid of Jewish science, Jews, there's only one Judah. Those are the only Jews, Judah. And when the, guys who were the mob, they end up, basically they were land pirates along the Silk Road, and the Tsar got tired of it, so he went and stepped on their neck and said, "Stop this! Stop! You can't be land pirates. Choose. Want to be Christian? Want to be Muslim? Want to be Jewish? Choose one." And because the Jews were so liquid and fluid, and always was, moving into a place, that's, and if you look at that motif, like go read Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. It puts it out better, Shakespeare had something going on, that's for sure. So he was, next to the Greeks, Euripides and Homer and those guys. So next show I'm going to compile a list of YouTube channels. And from what I am seeing the last month or so, since I got rid of my passive aggressive, I haven't gotten rid of it, I just don't use it that much. My passive aggressive phone, I now use that as a tablet, and this phone is this phone. But it is like everything the threads are sending me are women who are brilliant. I guess I need a brilliant new girlfriend. My last one was 10 months ago. And that was nice. That was, since the last 10 years, 12 years, I haven't had any wives. I've just have had affairs to remember, meaning committed relationships and not fooling around, not looking at somebody else, being there 100%, but not as long as my other marriages, because all my training marriage had lasted 8 years. All the other lasted more than 5, right, each. So the affairs to remember, they usually lasted hot and heavy for somewhere about 3 to 5 months. And then because both of us would be moving someplace else, I mean, we just found ourselves stuck usually at a university where we knew nobody else, and we bumped into each other and found how much we enjoyed each other's company, and that we were more or less not needing company, right? But once you found somebody, hey, you're kind of cute, you're kind of hot, you're really smart, you're really fun, you like to dance, you like to eat, you like to do all this, oh boy, you cook, meaning me. So most of that stuff, women were going, boy, you do all this stuff I really like. And, you do it when I don't want to do it, and it's just as good. Yummy. Yes, you're my boy. So, and I'm going to be here. How long are you here for? 4 months? I'm going to be here 3. So, hey, let's have a good time. And we did. And so that was an affair to remember. And then what would come about, we would circle around, not by our own means, but just fate would put us together, and we'd not be in a committed relationship or anything. And we'd find because all the women, not all, but 90% of the women that I was involved with were people who were like me, itinerant scholars. And so I would bump into them again at another university, another facility, another this or another that. And it was great because, we had to sign, non-disclosure things. And what better thing to go hang out with someone and be intimate with them, that you're working on the same project, so you don't have to worry about disclosing anything. Anyway, so that's what a good life is about. Giving yourself up to the we and me, being there to serve love's co-creation through the covenant of the source of all of us together. So say we all, right? Well, I know, what am I is that I'm aware, conscious intent, and I'm very observant, and I have this gift that's not of my making, but I'm usually like 98% of the time right in the right place at the right time, just like talking to you. Vlad, tell us about yourself, Vlad, right? To know a lot of things about a lot of things, again, you have to be in the right place at the right time. And you have to be aware of your own biases and your own, prejudice. And prejudice is just your opinion. Whenever I see a very opinionated person, I know what I'm talking about. I'm opinionated, right? I go, well, you're prejudiced. No, I'm not. I have black friends. I said, no, that's racism. Prejudice is when you believe that you know what you're talking about. Me, I'm smart enough to know that I don't know everything. But I've been around a lot of stuff because my life, the thing that interests me is to know stuff, right? To be part of stuff, to serve love's co-creation. And that's not to stick yourself in a hole. It's to be out there amongst everybody, right? So, well, we went past 11 minutes. We're into 19 minutes. And there's 2 thumbs up. So tell us more about yourself there, Vlad. Is it Vlad? Vlad? Panic. You're not panic. So panic is an emotional state of anxiety, right? And panic doesn't happen like a light switch, right? Panic kind of creeps up your back, right? Just little by little bit until that's when you're in panic. Before it's just annoyance, and then it's, impatience, and then it's anxiety, and then if you let it keep going, you get into panic and you start, you can't breathe. The way you get over it is, it's just a habit. That's all it is, a habit. And the only way you can get over habits is to put something in its place. My name is Vlad. Okay, so you are Vlad, so good to meet you, Vlad. What neck of the woods you in? And where'd you grow up? Me, I grew up everywhere. Let's see. Greetings from Serbia. I love Serbia. I'm an artist, so am I, an illustrator. I've been listening to your clips whenever I get a chance for years. And oh, good. So you're part of the cadre. So tell the cadre about where you live, about Serbia. Serbia is, again, one of those places where the modern, Israeli came from. Right? They were lots of different things. So do you know about Khazarian mob? Do you know about the Tartarian culture that was the base of your culture? And if you're an artist, illustrator, you should go look on the internet. So keep an eye out for my next show, because I'm going to make a big list of all these YouTube things that have come my way, which I'm sure you'll like. Chris Hedges is a very good one. A guy named Cliff High, right? He's another very... another good one is a guy named Dark Journalist, Daniel. He's really a good one. And this... Wendy... No, again, I've come across about 20 women who are the most brilliant humans I've come up across. And you know what? For all my life, 95% of all the brilliant people I have run up against have been women. Right? And the 5% of brilliant guys were like me, meaning their whole life was running up against 95 brilliant women, realizing they're brilliant women and having them in their life, and then them having the one skill set. All of those guys who ran pretty amazing, like the CFR, Trial Commission, the ISIS Foundation, what other? Oh, those are the, and then guys who were like doing it on their own. A good example of a guy doing it on his own was Billy Kluver, right? Go look him up, right? He did the Armory show. He also got a Nobel Prize for finding the background radiation of the universe. He was in the Rad Lab and during World War II, and was Mr. Radar. And one day he was out there in Nellis, in Arizona or Nevada, wherever Nellis is. It goes right on the line. It's also near California too. It's like this. That whole neck of the woods out there is like one big whoa. Anyway, he was out there and had a big, like 20-meter antenna, and he, instead of like doing downrange microwave experiments, because they were trying to turn microwave into a weapon, basically to disrupt the field around flying saucers, to like drop them out of the sky. Because all a flying saucer does is has a bunch of capacitors around its base, and they can cycle not Hertzian, but scalar energy. They have these transformers that take, DC Hertzian current into scalar, and then they dump that into these cycling capacitors, and that's how because the way they describe gravity is not what it is, right? So, I mean, all that Einstein called it, he understood the esotericness of it, so he could, within his Akashic record, pull out equations that could give you. It's like a field equation. A field equation is designed to balance a super high voltage transformer or a generator that is kicking out scalar current, right? And there are component parts of scalar energy that are very squirrely and dangerous. And so they had to figure out a mathematical equation that you could put in all the variables and tune the transformer so it doesn't kill you or anybody within a 50-mile radius. I mean, that's kind of what happened with the Philadelphia experiment. Why those guys, the Navy guys, got stuck in the bulkheads because they were taken out of their time dimension, and they were in 3 and 4 dimensions at once. It's not a healthy thing to do, especially if you're standing right in the middle of it. So, anyway, field equation is an equation they developed, and it's like you put it on a blackboard. You need a half a football field long of a blackboard. But there's a way, and this is why it's called a field equation, because it's done in it's broken up into different parts depending on what the variables are, and you put the variables in those different component parts, and then do a specific equation for each of them, and you take their answer and you stick it very simply in a chain, and divide it by this, get the square root of that, multiply it by this, and do those kind of simple things that if you do this shit, you can almost do it in your head. But you have slide rule, no problem. So anyway, long story short, they actually have little hand. One of the first hand calculators I ever saw was designed specifically to put all of that simple data into a hand thing and hit a button, bing, it would give you the answer, right? But you can do that field equation out there in the field relatively easy on the back of an envelope, right? So that's what I call a field equation. Anyway, so you're an artist, illustrator. So I appreciate that. So how about, in the last 4 or 5 months, YouTube has somehow they kept wanting me to do this, do that, and I just ignored them. And so now they take, this kind of thing and break it into little clips. I mean, 2 or 3 minutes. And I don't know how they do it, but they have an algorithm that picks out the most important thing over a 2-hour show and make it into a 3-minute clip that is pretty. It squishes it into that little time zone. And it does a pretty good job. And it comes out relatively soon, meaning a whole show usually takes 12 to 20 hours to, come up on my channel and to render. But those little clips pretty much get up there within 5-10 minutes, So anyway, that's kind of what it is. So 2 thumbs up, a bunch of you have been watching. So, let's see, what else are you saying here? What is honestly enjoyed the most was your incredible experience with David Bowie. Yeah, that was until I was like a period in my life. Again, the only reason any of that happened is because I was living in New York City and I was in the right place at the right time. I mean, I would have never worked at the Fillmore East unless I was walking down 6th Street going towards my place down on Avenue D. And I was about, I turned a corner. There's a alley that goes by where Cooper Union is, and I'd gone in to see a buddy, and I came out the back door where his studio was, and it popped me out right on 6th Street, and I walked, down 3 blocks, and I don't know what, not quite, maybe it was third. I don't know what avenue I was on. Because right down there, they all kind of squished together, between. Anyway, I was right near Cooper Union, let's say, and I was maybe a block from where the stage door of the Fillmore East, which is on 6th Street between Avenue, 2nd Avenue, whatever that other avenue is. Anyway, so it's not 3rd Avenue, it's another name to it, but it's where Cooper Union is. Anyway, long story short, walking on that thing, and the door's open, and there's a truck there, and I had the gantry between the truck, because I could just roll the stuff out of the truck and into the stage. It was really a nice stage door, really big, like 20, 30 feet wide, and it had this nice little lip that you could just put this metal thing on, and it would go right to whatever your tractor trailer was. So you could roll the stuff out. You didn't have to lift anything, no hydraulics, just roll it right in. Anyway, so I'm walking up there, and all of a sudden, gigantic explosion occurs. All this stuff and wire, like speaker cone wire, comes flying out. And now I've seen pictures of the drones with the fiber optics. It looks just like that. There's a battlefield, and it looks the whole like football field, and it's just covered up with like fishing twine, basically. Anyway, so this stuff comes flying out, and a big white smoke, and then black smoke, and then chunks of stuff flying through the air. And I just kind of stop, and I have I'm just coming home from work, so I have my little bag of I can fix anything with the tools I have in this bag. And I kind of basically look at that, and I open up my bag, and I have one of these masks. Covers your whole freaking head, and there's 2 respirators on either side. Whenever I go into any kind of nasty thing, I don't just wear a white little paper mask. It would cover my eyes, right? I'd stuck things in my ears, and I kind of went up the steps and walked in. And across on the other side, which would be stage left, where the staircase went up to the dressing rooms, basically and where the stage manager's little desk was, right behind it, towards right on the back wall, so a good 50 feet from the stage manager's desk. And there were steps that went down to where the basement was, and also went out into the audience, right? And also there was a basically fire exit that went up the side of the house to where you walked into the, walking in, where they had the popcorn. Anyway, so because this used to be a movie hall, right? It used to be a vaudeville hall before the movie hall. But anyway, so I kind of walk across the stage, and right there on the backstage wall was this big thing of knife switches and disconnects and fuse boxes and you name it, and it was all on fire. It was burning up big time, right? And I could see that someone had just put in copper tubes into the main disconnect, right? So right there was a gigantic chemical fire extinguisher. I said, oh, look at that. So basically, I also saw what is known as a stage hook, wooden hook with like 2 or 3 kind of different size hooks, metal hooks, to grab something, like grab a light or grab a piece of scenery or something, right? And it was long, about 20 feet long, right? So I took that, and I put my tools down on the table, the desk of the stage manager, and everybody was not there. Everybody was like already ran out, and there was white smoke everywhere. And I knew the fire wasn't that big a deal because there was only white smoke, right? And, not the black smoke yet. Black smoke is when that thing is getting hot. And the white smoke is when it was burning really fierce and furious and burned up everything. Because all of that stuff, half of that electric stuff came from like the 1890s. So it was wood, not metal, wood. Right? And they had, insulators, right? And they had buses, on insulators. So anyway, and those buses were like red hot. They were like a stove because that main disconnect over there Didn't have fuses in it. It had copper pipe, because I'm sure it's blown many a time. And they said, well, we have all these other fuse boxes and disconnects where those fuses will pop off. But everything was on fire, and the main bus was like, whee! They're ready to, cook up s'mores. So anyway, I took that wooden thing and got 20 feet away from it, got it on the hook of the main disconnect, and luckily it hadn't welded itself to the prongs, and I just went, and those glowing copper tubes stopped glowing, and the bus stopped glowing. So I rolled the big chemical fire extinguisher off, cut everything that. And then there was another one with foam. I said, oh, look at that. And I hit it with the foam, still keeping half of the chemical, because it was one of those big ones that had wheels, kind of one that you'd see at an airport. Anyway, so I put that next to it just in case, and then used up the foam one, which did a very nice job of cooling stuff down and turning it back more into white smoke, right? Still had my little respirator on. And so I then found this very nice big metal, like a trough almost, right? And it was about, the bus was about, 6 foot long, and this thing was about 4 foot long. And so I put the fire out, basically where the buses came off from the main disconnect, there was, a cable, a 500 MC8 cable, wasn't copper. So it's very easy to just, I took out my loppers, big scissors, I can cut anything, like cut your arm off, right? And just kind of clip, took, 8 inches of that wire that went from the lug of the disconnect to the bus, took that piece of wire up, that piece of wire, all 3 pieces, and the neutral out, took them all out. So no current, right? And then I went down, to where that disconnect went downstairs. I just went down those stairs, and there was the Edison buck. I pulled up the plate, and I looked at the wires coming in from, and they were relatively new, right? And they were like zillion aught, so they didn't even get warm. And so that meant for everything from the Edison box up to the disconnect, not a problem, right? Good. So, okay, going to do that. So I basically take a look at the disconnect and say, well, we're just going to use, this ain't going to be a fused disconnect, or maybe it will be, but right now it's just going to be a disconnect, right? So those copper pipes, I just left them there, and like I said, I could pull the knife switch out, so the shoes were not damaged really. So we got a big chunk of copper. So it didn't melt like the bus was, like I said, the bus was like ready to do s'mores. So anyway, I was all set, and I'm only into doing this for 15 minutes. So I move that trough over, and I just start pulling all of the wood and electrical down, and it's still kind of smoldering. I kind of hit it with the foam again, and then I walk out. And I said, where's the stage manager? And the guy said, I am. I said, so you got to have a fan, don't you? And go, yeah, we have one. I said, okay, good. So I need to evacuate the smoke from here. I said, so that main disconnect, there's got to be another power source for the house, for the offices, for whatever else other than that. And he goes, oh, yeah, we have a front of the house. It comes in a whole different way. I said, oh, good. Let's go take a look. We go take a look, and they're actually right there in that, like, little office warehouse, where they have, lots of stuff there, light bulbs and all kinds of stuff. They have a big fan, right? So they actually have 2 big fans, right? So basically there is, there's the main doors where all the crowd comes in, and then over here into this little thingamajig, there's an office off the thingamajig where there's a door outside, because there is the ticket thing, And so there's a nice door, and there's the ticket thing, and there's a little hallway goes into right. It doesn't go in the lobby; it goes straight into the house. So I basically opened those doors, put the thing sucking air into the house, and then the other one we roll it down towards the stage door, and there is a plug near the stage door that's on that house circuit. Plug it in that. So we're evacuating the smoke very nicely. So within 5 minutes, I don't need to wear the respirator thing anymore. But I pull that shit down. I have the stage manager get his crew to drag the smoldering remnants of the what was the distribution panel, and that's when Bob Goddard showed up. And what's going on? And Bob Goddard owned Pig Lights and Joshua Light Show, and he was in charge of everything electric, but he wasn't an electrician. He didn't really. He had a couple of guys he knew who were electric, but he didn't have an electrician. And that's why things were so fucked up. Because it was just totally Rube Goldberg. Anyway, so then Bill Graham showed up. And because they weren't there when the catastrophe happened, but they were gotten a hold of, and they just, I'd already put the fire out. I'd already demoed the crap out. I'd already got the smoldering shit out of the thing. And the guy who's the head of the house and the stage manager is one and the same. He was like the guy in charge when those boys weren't there. And so they go, "What's going on? Larry, what's going on?" It's a miracle. And he said, "We had an explosion and everyone was running out. No one knew what to do. And this kid, he just walked in. He put this, and he's got it totally cleaned out. There's no fire. Nothing burnt up. I mean, the distribution is gone, but he saved the main and the Edison box downstairs. It's all good." So they turned to me. "So who are you?" I said, "Well, I'm Sensie Owl Bob. I work for Mike Stahl Electric." And, Bob Goddard knew all about, Grandpa Stahl. I said, "Yeah, I'm Grandpa Stahl's apprentice, his last apprentice." "I've heard of you." I said, "Yeah, that's me." And so he turns to Bill. He's the guy. And so Bill goes to me, "How much is it going to cost to get this house back up?" I said, "When's your next show?" He goes, "Tomorrow night." I said, "Okay." I said, "Who's showing up?" He goes, Grateful Dead, and I forgot the other two guys. But they were just as good. But anyway, I think Hot Tuna, Grateful Dead, and I forget the third. But they were all pretty good. So I said, "No problem." I said, "I need 2 of your guys. I need you, Billy." So I said, "Bill, do you have people here? Who is your? Do you have a best boy?" He goes, "No." I said, "Who's your roadies? Who's your guys who load in?" He goes, "Well, normally it's the show." I said, "But who's more than Larry? Who's Larry's crew? Who's the stage crew?" And so Joe and Bob and Larry, right? I said, "Okay, those 3 guys and you. And so I take them over to 16th Street and Union Square. There's 2 big electric supply places in New York City. I mean, there's a ton of them, but 2 of them, like, whoa, the guys who started the union, right? So I don't know if they were part of the IBEW. They might have been. One was Frank Vigiano's Vica Electric downtown, and everything that went into the World Trade Center went through, Frank Vigiano. He made book on that, and everything else went through this other place, right? And so, Mike and Grandpa, they had a lot to do with that place, right on 16th Street, right on the corner point of Union Square. Anyway, so we go in there with Bob Goddard, and Bob, that's his, he's got an account. I said, "You got an account with that place?" "Yes." So we go in that place, and I could have done it on my account in that place, but he had an account. So I called them up before we left, and I gave them an order of this kind of switchgear, this kind of circuit breaker box, this kind of piece of trough, this, all of the stuff, just like out of my head, what we need, this kind of wire, da 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 da, right? And I knew the guy. I talked to Vinny at the counter. I said, Vinny, pull this stuff. I'm going to be there in 40 minutes. Can you have it all in boxes at the loading dock? He goes, no problem, Al. And I said, who's going to pay for this? On your account? Grandpa's account? I said, no. Bob Goddard? Oh, yeah. Pig Lights. Yeah, we know those guys. I said, and then I put Bob on the phone. This is Vinny. Bob. Yes, Vinny. Vinny. Yes, Bob. That's Al, right? You know Al? Oh, yeah. He's Grandpa's number one man. His apprentice. He's the sorcerer's apprentice, right? So, anyway, we went there. Everything was ready. We went back. I had it all planned out. Actually, I said, of all of your people, who knows how to use a jack? Do you have a jackhammer? Do you have anything to put, hangers into the wall? And he goes, oh, yeah, I just got this one guy, Mikey. He's very handy. He can fix anything. I said, good. I said, Mikey, that's what I want. And I had like spray can with orange paint in my little bag. I kind of laid it out on the wall. I said, so there's these 3 lugs already in there, right? I want you to take them out without ruining the threads or the hanger, okay? Just take it out, right? Here's some, lubricant. They didn't have WD-40 yet. And that's how long ago this was. Anyway, so I put them up and I said, go get your whatever ladders you have, small ladders, 6-foot ladders, and a 10-foot ladder, right? And get 2 or 3 6-foot ladders and a 10-foot ladder or 12-foot, but right? Okay. And, get an extension cord from that outlet over there where the fan is and run it over here. Or if you got one on the other side of the house, run it from, but get, an extension cord. I said, okay. And I said, also, we're going to kind of need some kind of lighting. So do you have a stage light? Oh, yeah. I said, we'll get 2 or 3. How many you got? If we got 2 or 3, bring them, right? So, because it was already in the afternoon, and I knew we were going to be working into the night. But the house lights still ran off from the front of the house, that service that came in off of 2nd Avenue. So anyway, I let Mikey doing that, and I was 16. Everybody was like in their 20s, or older, and I was, giving orders, right? So anyway, Bob, me, and one of the other guys went in Bob's truck to that place on 16th Street and Union Square, and went to the thing. So Vinny, Bob signed for it. We loaded up his truck, went back, put Kindorf up, and put hangers into the Kindorf, and parts of it, like the trough. Well, pretty much I got 2 sheets of plywood that they had kicking around. I said, Vinny, you got any plywood? And he said, oh, yeah, we got 2 sheets. So, I said, do you have a skill saw? Yeah, I'll lend you a skill saw. So we hung, by that time, the guy, Mikey, had it all set. We put the Kindorf up. We hung the plywood on the Kindorf, and we had where we drilled holes. I kind of marked on the plywood and put holes where we're going to hang the panels, the distribution, the disconnects, the trough, right? And we were going to basically, because I wanted it to be, and I grounded those pieces of Kindorf, because there was down by the Edison box, there was the original man time, that's the ground, right? Not like some pipe somewhere, but right there, the real, honest to God, coming up the transformer into street ground, right? So I run a nice piece of, 5-aught wire from there all the way into where the trough is going to be and where the Kindorf is, and I basically ground everything seriously, the trough, the Kindorf, everything that's going to be a metal box is going to be severely grounded. And the ground itself, I brought another separate wire that I was going to have a separate ground in each of those distribution panels. And one of them was just going to be for the sound, period. And that was going to be totally isolated, right? So anyway, I did all of that, and I said to Bob Goddard and to Bill, I said, listen, okay, so the materials are going to be about $800, and I want $3,000 cash, period. That's it, right? And by, here it is. We're going to start working on this thing by about 6 o'clock, and by 8 o'clock, pretty much everything will kind of be there, right? You'll see that what's going on, right? That's when you give me the money, right then and there. You leave another $1,500 for me when I finish everything. So, Bill had it in his little safe upstairs, not a problem. He said, I have no problem with cash, right? So anyway, we did that, and I worked all afternoon, all evening, into the early mornings, and around, I guess 8 o'clock in the morning, it was all done. Everything was done, and Bob had his, all the stuff that by right about when everything was all done, that's when the guys, the roadies from that show showed up and started, getting everything ready. And it was all the plugs, T-codes, everything was ready to go. And that's when Bob Goddard said, I've been looking for an electrician. You're it, kid. I said, okay, cash on the dollar, no problem. And you just listen. You don't, I'm not an employee. You're my client, period. You need me more than I need you, period. And Bill was there, and I said, that goes twice for you, buddy. And I'm 16 years old, and I said it to these guys, because by that time, I had already been with Mike and Grandpa Stahl since I was 9. And before that, I had about another 6 elderly men who taught me what it was to be a man, a responsible, disciplined, focused male unit of the human race, right? Not God, not, but all of the above. And you're there to serve the human race. But to be serving the human race, it's not, I know what I'm doing. No. It is that you're in charge. But being in charge, you're responsible. But being responsible means you listen to everybody, everything that comes in. You are consciously aware, So, that's how I did that. And that was it. That was it. That was the dude. That's when people said to me, the guys like Herbert Berber. And so when I told, a few days later when we were, they said, oh, wow, this guy knows everything. So they had other things for me to do, right? And again, I laid the shit out. I took Bob's guys and I said, Bob, I'm going to retrain. You don't have enough people. And you're just winging you know what you're doing. You are really good, but you're not an electrician. You are a scenic lighting designer, set designer, best boy. You worked for Edward Millen. And so, anyway, I've been, apprenticing with Lester Polikoff, and he's going, oh my God. Lester Polikoff was a god in theater. He worked for Joe Melziner. Joe Melziner invented modern lighting. Joe Melziner took theater from candles to electric lights. The Fresnel, the Lico, the Follow Spot, the, Scoop, you name it, he designed it, he built it, right? So he invented the light bulbs, the T12, which was a focal, it had you put the light, it just didn't screw it in. You put it in, clipped it, and it locked in a specific way so the element could hit the mirror just exactly right and reflect through the lens to project whatever effect you wanted to affect. And that's what modern theater is all about, making the effect, the magic. Lighting does the magic, right? The actor, the script. The script and the lighting are the two most important things. Anyway, so that's when I became the dude at 16, right? And by doing that, I did all kinds of other shows and other theaters and other, you name it, got involved in 1,000 other things. Only because I was walking down 6th Street and 2nd Avenue, towards 2nd Avenue. I was going, I guess, east on 6th Street, heading towards Alphabet City, heading towards 2nd Avenue. And I had no idea that was going to happen. I didn't have it planned. But I just, once that explosion went thing, and I just kind of, I had my little, it was basically a postal delivery bag, It was the size of a suitcase, but it made out of canvas. And it had a leather strap that you put over your shoulder. And you could put it was really big. It was like a magic bag. Whatever I needed was in that bag. Every kind of, it was just long enough. It was about 3 foot long, had a metal frame around it, so that I could fit my loppers in there. And I could physically cut, without pneumatics, I could cut a aught wire. I could cut, and I had a hacksaw, so I could take the lopper and then take it around it, and then undo it, and then hit it with a hacksaw, and I could make a nice cut. So anyway, you know how to use the right tool for the right job, and you have the experience of doing it, you can do almost anything. So I did that, right? Less than 14 hours from fire extinguishing, and that was it. Man, I was the dude. I mean, that's how I wired Electric Ladyland and Blue Rock and Sun Dragon and AR, all those places. I was 16, and basically the thing was out. This guy will give you a price that is less than anybody else, but he wants cash, and he will always deliver. He will not tell he will always deliver. You might freak out. It might be at the last moment. He will always deliver. You can count on the dude. Now, from 16 to about 19, I got a little bit full of myself because I went from being the dude to being anytime, because I would show up whenever I wanted to show up. I knew what needed to be done, what it'd take, da-da-da-da-da. Now, they didn't. They would freak out. They didn't get upset. But I liked it that they were nervous, and then I'd save the day. Always save the day. That was another nickname, save the day. The dude who saves the day. I mean, I went by what my grandma taught me. She taught me to, never work for anybody who doesn't need you more than you need their paycheck. Never have. Never have. I'd rather not work. I'd rather live on $3 a month, like a king, It's not how much money that gives you security. It's a relationship you have with Source. You'll always get what you need. Just like I did with that lady, paying her grocery bill and then having enough in there to give her $60. Know what I mean, man? Know what I mean? So here it is. So it's going to be 2 hours. When it hits 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 22 seconds, I'll in the trenches, how you feel. Yep, okay, good. I do know how you feel, because I've been in the trenches. I mean, literally in the trenches. Now, you're talking about Serbia? Now, that was a place that was in the trenches. And still, the problem with Serbia, it's still stuck in its mind in the trenches. Right? It's a beautiful place. You should let it go. The most was incredible story about the crone. Yep, again. I didn't I didn't plan to meet the crone, right? I didn't even plan to be at Trinity. I was sent to Dublin to become part of Dublin's Irish National Theatre. Louise sent me there, Tulin, right? There's the Tulin family, right? They were connected to everything. So anyway, so I was sent there. And when I showed up there, I was, okay, I've gotten to get through the back door, and went and I talked to the guy who ran the whole theater, and he goes, "Do you know Gaelic?" I said, "No." You go, "Know this kind of language?" "No." "You know that?" "No." "Do you know this myth?" "No." He goes, "Well, I'm going to send you to Trinity and study the ancient arts. Then come back to us. That might take 5 years, but then, you finish with that, you'll be just right for us, and you'll be a lot older." So that's how I ended up in Trinity. Trinity is a hard place to get into, but that guy who ran the National Theater, and he owed the Tulins something, and that's how I got into Trinity, and that's how I got into a department that was it's like the X-Files of the Trinity Library. And the Trinity University is the only university in all of the freaking world that isn't controlled by the Jesuits. That's why they had to picket fence all the way around the thing. Keep those Jesuits out. And the Druids in, right? That's the other side of the coin. But that school has been running, Trinity in Dublin has been running consecutively for 2,500 years. So they got quite the library. So I was sent not just to the library where the kids go and look at things up into, no, I was sent to the, ancient X-Files, interesting, because I went, over there to, the Gaelic whoop-de-doo, because the guy over the national thinks, he needs to study X, Y, and Z. He needs to know this, that, and the other thing. He needs to know the myths, and he needs to know it all. That was the X-Files. So that guy sent me down that. That's where I met, what was his name? My boss, basically, Archie. I forget his name, but he was Scottish. And if you ever seen the movie with, what's his name? Freedom! That was Archie, right? He came from that school. But he was also one of those, somewhere in his great, shorthanks or whatever, English king of the time, reptile, basically bought him out. So he became a duke, earl, owned castles, and had property. And one of the things was property in Ireland. So he had stuff in Scotland, and he was, whoop-de-doo of Scotland, and he got stuff in Ireland, went to Ireland, and he liked that. So part of his family, Archie's part, was in Ireland, right? So he was Irish, but he was Scottish. He was, Duke of Earl of someplace. He had a castle in Scotland, and he had a bunch of shit in Ireland. And he had studied the X-Files forever, and he met all of the, the folk that are known as Roma. They don't like to be called Roma because they're different sects, right? They're not just all Roma. They're not all gypsies. They're all, go read, again, Shakespeare's, Midsummer Night's Dream. It's all about that. If you read Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, that's what I was living with the crone. Yep. Well, I think it may happen, the big YouTube products. But they've come to me a number of times, and they wanted to own me. They said, "Oh, you're great, you're blonde, we're going to make you famous, and you're going to make you rich, blah, blah, blah." Well, I've been infamous, and I have been, more money than I knew what to do with. And so what did that? It freaking killed me, Between 2003 and 2014, I worked in the corporate legal world. Again, doing just what I did with, Bill Maurice. I worked for those clowns, and they needed me way more than I needed them. So I could make a big, ridiculous amount of money in like somewhere between 2 and 11 weeks a year. And people would say, you made that much money in that short period of time? Well, if you worked all year round, you'd be a millionaire. I said, well, I don't need to be a millionaire. I live like a millionaire because all these clowns love me. So they would let me stay in their big whoop-de-doo $1 million estate down in the Florida Keys and over here and over there and everywhere. I could stay in all these places and be treated like royalty because they're, people who were their staff. I treated them like human beings, and I was nice to them, and I was, helpful to them, and I didn't demand anything out of them, and I would fix things so their life would be easier, and they would get, oh, you did that? That's really good, instead of getting yelled at or fired. So within that structure, again, I was the dude, and that, if I have any talent, is to be in the right place at the right time, and know that I'm not the dude. I know that I'm that guy. I'm the lucky guy, right? I'm the LG. I'm not the dude. Dude means you have a commodity of ego, hubris. I try not to have, that's like Greek tragedy. Not a good thing to have, right? So I do my best, to, serve, protect the innocent, right? The other, right? You do that, the gods like that, right? And the gods exist. All those Roman and Greek gods, they exist. They're just not source. They're just gods, right? So the Roman Catholic God is a Roman God, right? It's Roman Catholics, right? So that God is just, big fat guy in a toga sitting on a gold toilet shitting on everyone. That's not source, sorry. Source has always been there. Always. You're live. I'm live. Who is listening? Yeah, who is listening? Who's a real fan? He's such a good boy. And Mrs. is hell. Anyway, but you're all here, and that's great. And get some more people. Get them to subscribe. Call up YouTube and say, Sensie Owl Bob, he needs to be a star, right? And just take all his shows, take the AI to edit, and AI is, I think, the only thing that's making these short things. Put all those shorts on TikTok, and take all my other shows. You're like, the big eye, and the eye is looking at you, seeing everything, the big eye, Go look at all the other shows and make a bunch of TikToks and make, Al infamous and famous, monetize him so he doesn't have to live on 12 cents a month, because then I would share that with other people who are crying that they can't afford their own breakfast. Anyway, I love how this thing keeps, like right now I don't have any. Now I have thumbs up. Now I don't have. Now I had 3 thumbs up. Now I don't have any. Now I have none. Now I have 4. Now I have none. Now I have none. Still have none. That's what I'm talking about, right? So it's now I have 2. So it's obviously that they're having fun with me, which is fine, right? Because you guys are there, and I'm enjoying that you're enjoying this, right? So I guess we went past 2222. Okay, when it hits an 8, I'm gonna go. I'm tired. What time is it? It's 10:30. So yes, all of those adventures I've had, now don't believe a word I say, they've all happened because I was in Source's flow, right? I was in love's co-creation. That's what this show's about. That's what I want to connect to you, that you can love your life, that you can be in state of Source, and then you can do whatever you want. And you will be doing the best for your neighbor, right? You won't be a piece of crap, right? You won't be stuck in fears, self-loathing. And that's what that shit is, self-loathing. Anyway, I love you guys. And, oh, there we go. I'm just kind of getting a little, 2 hours is a long time for a show. So I'm going to make a cup of tea. Maybe I'll come back later. Who knows? But it's in the European land. It's kind of, you guys are all asleep. It's like 4 a.m. in European land. And in other places, Asia, where a lot of people are, India, a lot of people watch the show. It's kind of in the afternoon. So anyway, but I know that the majority of you folk watch this after I've done it. But I'm glad that you all came on and added your essence into the show, because you are also the pebble in the pond of the World Wide Web. And I love the fact that you do it. Okay, gang, I love you guys. I'll see you maybe later or earlier in the morning or in the afternoon. Tomorrow, what am I doing? I got a few errands, so we'll see. We'll see what's going on. But probably doing something in the morning and something in the afternoon, maybe something in the evening, depending on where I am and what's going on. Okay? Okay.